Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Friday, December 27th, and this week, Walmart gets sued, same ride, different prices, and Instacart fights back. Legal Rideshare breaks it down. And from Legal Rideshare, I'm joined by the co-founder and lead attorney, Bryant Green. Bryant, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Jared, on this holiday week and weekend.
Yeah, this is a weird holiday week. It's like everything's in the middle of the week. It's all kind of becoming a blur to me. I don't know. I mean, it's a bit wild.
We have like 2 Mondays and 2 Fridays.
It's just, and time is flying. You know, the year is coming to an end. I can only imagine what next year brings. But yeah, interesting stories this week. As usual, we're going to jump right into them. The first one is new to me. Walmart is in trouble for opening up millions of deposit accounts for delivery drivers. This comes from CBS News, and they reported, quote, more than 1 million delivery drivers collectively paid more than $10 million in fees after Walmart and Branch Messenger illegally opened costly deposit accounts in their names without consent. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau alleges in a lawsuit that was filed on Monday against a retailer. The federal agency claims drivers were forced to use the accounts to get paid and were deceived about how to access their earnings, with Walmart threatening to fire workers who did not comply. Drivers had to follow a complicated process to get their pay and then faced further delays or fees if they needed to transfer the money into another account. And now, as a result, workers forked over more than $10 million in fees to transfer their earnings into accounts of their choosing. Bryant, this is crazy. What a wild situation here for these delivery drivers in Walmart.
Yeah, this is crazy. And I think it's just another example of the companies not taking steps to protect the workers and ensure that the workers are in the best position. We see over and over that companies do what's convenient for them, what's going to make them the most money. And ultimately, they don't care whether it harms the drivers physically, financially. In this case, it's costing them millions and millions of dollars. So I see this as just another example of the companies doing what works for them and leaving the worker by the wayside.
Yeah, and it's just, it's one of these things, again, where we're seeing that they're just saying it's our way or the highway. The system isn't even, clearly wasn't operating legally, and then still punishing the drivers for trying to work around that system or even work with that system. Go ahead.
I think that you make a really good point. It's their way or the highway, meaning you have to comply with this system or you're gone. And we see that with all of the app companies, that there's just no room for negotiation. There's no room for a conversation as to what's working, what's not working, what's going to benefit the driver. We see with deactivations that there's just no ability for the drivers to put their voice forward and ensure that their rights are being negotiated to their benefit. So that's why things like the unions and all the things that we're seeing in Massachusetts and nationwide, where drivers are collectively standing up to protect themselves, it's for things like this. It's for situations where they're being taken advantage of, their voice is not being heard, the companies are strong-arming them. They need representation, and this is just a clear example why.
Right. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm surprised that the fine is only $10 million. I feel like with the amount of delivery drivers, the amount of volume, it'd be a lot higher, but it seems like 10 million is the number, which is still very substantial, but just a totally insane story. And I'm sure this just came out, so I feel like and CBS just covered this. I do feel like probably in the next week or two, we'll probably hear some more updates on this, or even Walmart's response, because in this article, they reached out to Walmart. I do believe all they said is they're going to fight it vigorously. So there's really no update on Walmart's side. So that this may really expand as far as the details of the story. But we're going to head to a second story now, which is something that we have talked about plenty of times. Why do the same Uber rides cost different prices? And this is from Economic Times, and they reported a recent viral post on social media has reignited concerns among Uber users about the fare disparity when booking rides from different devices. So one Uber user shared his experience on X, where he noticed a significant price difference for this same trip on his phone and his daughter's phone. Uber was quick to respond, clarifying that there are various factors that can lead to different fares for the same trip. They said, "Hi, there are multiple differences in these two rides impact the prices. The pickup point, ETA, and drop-off point on these requests vary, which will cause different fares. Uber does not personalize trip pricing based on rider's cell phone manufacturer," the company explained. However, while Uber insists that the device itself does not influence the pricing, users remain divided. Some believe that Uber might be charging higher fares for iPhone users compared to Android users, while others speculate that the differences could be attributed to Uber's dynamic pricing model, which fluctuates based on real-time factors like traffic and demand. This is a hot topic, obviously, for drivers, especially. There was that big, the big video and big article that came out about this for the driver side pay. Now we're also seeing disparities in the rider side. Same location, same trip, different phones. So this may go way bigger than we thought it did.
Yeah, there's just, first of all, a lack of transparency. I think customers and drivers alike want to know why they're being charged a certain amount. They want to be told and want to be able to confirm that they're not being taken advantage of. And what we're seeing here is two riders, same location, same time, same traffic patterns, same destination. Nothing would have been different in this scenario. So I don't think that Uber's explanation makes sense for this particular case. And there they were charged two different amounts. I've seen it on, I've got, a business account, I've got a personal account, and I've seen different prices based on which account I'm ordering from. So I don't know the logistics of it. I don't know why there's different prices at different times, but I can tell you that the prices do vary. I've seen it myself. And Uber needs to be more transparent. The explanation needs to add up in a way that this explanation is not. And I think customers and drivers are going to demand answers because they're tired of being at least perceived to be taken advantage of.
Yeah, the article is pretty interesting. It actually talks about other companies that have been caught doing similar things. A company called Zepto, the e-commerce platform, was also accused of charging more for iPhone users in the past, really sparking a bigger controversy. So this actually seems to be an ongoing issue, not just with Uber, but other tech companies and app companies, I guess, modifying or potentially skewing their fares or prices based on the fact that, well, if you're an iPhone user, you can pay more. You're willing to pay more, which is insanely unfair. And Uber's response to this, that there's multiple factors, pickup point, ETA, and drop off, they were all the same. It was all the exact same time. I would understand if it even was a block away, you could argue, well, it's still a difference in distance and where they have to turn to get you. This is the same house, the same location, the same time. So I don't buy that. But as you said, it's always lack of transparency with these companies, and it's so hard for anyone to break through that barrier and get any transparency.
Well, that's the thing. If Uber had a stellar reputation for respecting its customers and its drivers, then maybe this explanation would make sense and we would all just say, okay, that's how it works. But because there's been such a history of a lack of transparency, of trying to nickel and dime everybody from every angle, this just seems to be another example. The customers in this situation and the drivers in the past are just less willing to accept Uber's explanation as gospel and want to see answers. They want to know what's going on. They want to know why they're being charged what they're being charged. And I think that's a fair thing to request.
Yeah, absolutely. Which really is a nice transition into our last story here involving deactivations. I feel like we haven't talked about these in a hot minute, but Instacart is joining Uber in fighting Seattle's deactivation law. Now, this is from GeekWire, and they reported Instacart is joining Uber in an attempt to block a new ordinance in Seattle that regulates how companies can deactivate workers who deliver food, shop for groceries, and complete other tasks via on-demand apps. The law was originally passed by the Seattle City Council in August of 2023 and signed at the time by the mayor, who designed to provide more job security to app-based couriers, delivery drivers, and other service providers. Now, Instacart says the ordinance infringes on constitutional rights and federal laws. The grocery giant alleges that the ordinance contradicts its views on safety and efficiency and poses risk to consumer safety and worker privacy given data disclosure requirements. Now, the law, the way this works, under the law, companies must give workers a 14-day notice of deactivation, base deactivations on reasonable policies, ensure human review of all deactivations, and provide workers with records behind the decision. I know we talked about this when it first came out, Brian. It was I think it was a great law that passed in August about this. I'm just not buying Instacart's side that this infringes on freedom and rights.
Yeah, well, whose rights does it infringe on?
Right.
It sounds like Instacart's, making the argument that it infringes on their ability to just terminate people without any notice, without any explanation, and frankly, just because they feel like it. Drivers, workers are entitled to some level of security in the job that they're working. There should be fairness. There should be some sense of due process. This law doesn't require the companies to not deactivate drivers. It doesn't require them to keep bad drivers or unsafe drivers on their platforms. It requires simply that they allow drivers an explanation and some notice of what's going on and an opportunity to challenge it if it's deemed unfair. I think all of those are reasonable caveats to any deactivation policy. One thing that I will say that I think could be carved out in a way that helps Instacart, Uber, and ultimately the driver base as well is if there's truly a safety issue, if somebody's accused of doing something that puts people's health, well-being, safety at issue, then perhaps you can deactivate immediately, but pay them for that period of time where they're off until the process can be reviewed. So I do see that there could be ways in which we could make this law a little bit tighter, like this 14-day notice of deactivation. I can see in some situations where that doesn't make sense from the company's perspective. But as long as the driver is being taken care of during the period of deactivation, that the driver has an opportunity to review the case with a human to see the evidence against them, it makes sense for everybody. We can't have companies just deciding that people are no longer going to have jobs when they've given their whole lives and base their livelihood on this profession. It just has to be fair, and this law creates a fair outcome for all.
Yeah, I mean, right. I think that's a good point, and I think there's obviously ways to improve, like you said, and that is a good way to improve it. And I think the thing that this does is, which is really important, it gives them a notice. But again, if I understand if it's a major safety issue, deactivate immediately. But for everyone else, it gives them a reasonable reason as to why they're deactivated, so they'll know in the future for other companies what not to do if that's the issue. Also, human review of deactivations. We know for a fact that most of these deactivations are so automated that the companies themselves don't know why they're deactivated. They have no idea. And so they just say, oh, safety or policy or something. And that's hard to swallow when, like you said, your whole life is working for this company. And most of the drivers and gig workers we talk to, this isn't just their first year. It's 5, 6, 7 years of doing this. And then all of a sudden automated deactivation. And they don't know why.
Right. They've invested in it. They've
Right.
given up other jobs. They've given up other opportunities to earn income. They've become part of this company. They've purchased vehicles. They've kept up their vehicles. Their whole life is structured around this job. They love the flexibility of it. So they've created a system at home where one spouse can work one job and the other spouse can drive for Uber or Lyft or Instacart and have that flexibility and therefore take care of the children during certain hours of the day. Like, you can't just pull the rug out from people without any explanation when they have centered their whole lives around this job for years and years. So, this has to be viable. This has to be a law that protects drivers, and it frankly should expand around the country. I am happy to have discussions and be reasonable about certain caveats of the law, what we need to do when safety is truly at play. But for the vast majority of these deactivations, this law makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, 100%. And hopefully, this law stays in effect. And like you said, I hope it expands. I think it really should. I think it's a good law and it makes sense, or even some versions of this law. Which again can be improved on, but it's at least giving people a fighting chance, which is what's important. That is the stories for this week. Brian, I'll give you the floor before we head into the weekend.
Yeah, before we head into the holiday weekend here, we always remind everybody that Legal Rideshare is available for free consultations. Should you ever find yourself injured in an Uber, Lyft, or any other gig-related activity, we help drivers, passengers, and victims recover things like cost of medical treatment, wage loss, pain and suffering, and any other damage that you sustain. So please visit us at legalrideshare.com, and we're always happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. And as I like to say, that is the end of this week in Rideshare. See you next week.